Dr. Mollie Marti with Resiliency Matters. We are coming together today for a conversation after the withdrawal from Afghanistan, the 20th anniversary of 9/11, to have a conversation to provide some helpful perspectives and tools. We at Worldmaker are proud that more than half of our board members are veterans, and we're joined by 3 of those board members today, as well as a special guest. Our board chair, David Richmond, served 26 years in the British Army. He was a colonel when he was shot by the Taliban and underwent 4 years of reconstructive surgery and rehabilitation. Jeff Buchanan is a retired lieutenant general in the U.S. Army, known as a 3-star general, who served 1 tour in Afghanistan and 4 tours in Iraq. Fiona Sweny is a British Army officer with the Royal Army Medical Corps, and she provided rehabilitation services to severely injured military personnel who served in Afghanistan and Iraq. And our special guest, Mr. Vincent Eure, is a master resilience trainer, and he oversees community support services at Joint Base Andrews and Joint Base Anacostia Bowling. Welcome. The level of service and experience joining us today is really humbling, and I thank you for your time. So Jeff, let's start with you. As a retired general, you have a unique leadership perspective. What do you want to say to service members or veterans who are framing the withdrawal from Afghanistan as meaning that their service didn't matter, that it was for nothing?
Thanks, Mollie. Let me just start by saying it's always an honor to join you and the rest of the Worldmaker team and in helping the entire world become more resilient. You know, I got a lot of questions from friends over the last couple of months, and there was concern about exactly what you said. Did our service really matter? Was it all for naught? And all these kinds of things. And I subscribe to a weekly national magazine, and the headline of last week's magazine was something to the effect of "Why We Lost." And so those two things have come together to cause me a little bit of concern. And so first of all, I couldn't disagree with that headline more. We didn't lose. You know, if you set out to look at, or if you look at what we set out to do 20 years ago, in the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks in 2001, our purpose for going to Afghanistan was to stop terrorist attacks emanating from that country to affect the Western world, the United States, Europe, et cetera. And along the way, the project changed. Frequently, I think you hear people talk about it as mission creep, but we decided we wanted to build a nation state, if you will, a place where, and as our other veterans of Afghanistan will know, there had been not much of a sense of national identity, rampant tribalism, not a lot of potential with respect to natural resources, infrastructure, empowerment of women, all of these kinds of things. And we decided to change that. And, in the end, we could not make Afghanistan look like your home state of Iowa. We shouldn't really be surprised or too disappointed. Frankly, I'm sad for the Afghans I worked with and served with. I feel badly for them. I don't think the Taliban has changed its stripes, and I can talk more about that at length. But with respect to members of the United States military, as well as our NATO partners, and others like Australians, Georgians, there was upwards of 40 to 50 member nations in the coalition. I don't think their veterans should feel bad about what we accomplished. We did what we set out to do, which was stop attacks from impacting the Western world.
Thank you, Jeff. And David, you personally paid a very high price. I referenced 4 years of surgeries and rehabilitation from your service in Afghanistan. What has your personal meaning-making process been?
I found the unfolding calamity really hard to watch initially, and I found it certainly the beginning, quite hard to process. And I did go through the whole very privately. What was all that about? Was it worth it? Why did we bother? Sort of internal dialogue just over a first day or two. And then I think I defaulted to what I've done for a long time now. And I thought, okay, let's focus on what I could control. What did I do that was within my gift? And I look back to our deployment to Afghanistan and the deployment of thousands of others around us for years before and for years afterwards. And we did everything that was asked of us and more. We fought hard against a determined and cunning and in many ways skillful enemy. We showed real care and compassion to Afghan civilians. And in doing all of that, we provided the relative security that allowed freedom to begin to flourish and social change to start to take root. And that manifested itself in lots of different ways that we could sort of rehearse endlessly. And then I looked more personally, and did I feel I'd led the troops under my command to the best of my ability? Yes, I did. And I remain now incredibly proud of everything that they did and our colleagues did, both in the UK and the US and other allies, for a period of 20 years. And those were all things that to some degree or another were within my control. What I couldn't control, and this is how I sort of rationalized it personally, is I can't control the decisions of other people. I can't control the decisions that led to those recent events. But what I can do is I can make sure that I don't allow what unfolded as a consequence to sort of erase from my memory and my mind the good work that we did and the benefits that we brought. And I've always felt in life generally, quite apart from my military career, that there's no point worrying overly much about what you can't control, or in this case, even influence. You can't always control events, but what you can do is control how you respond to them. And that's what I then sort of focus my efforts on. And that's how I rationalized it. And I actually, as soon as I got to that point, which probably took me 36 hours or so of watching things unfold, and the sort of default setting of my mind sort of flicked into, okay, let's put this into something more logical. That's rather where I arrived. And I'd really encourage, I think as Jeff has already mentioned, the people who deployed and those who are wrestling with it, I don't think it was wasted time. I don't think it was pointless service. We did everything that we were asked to do. We're servicemen and women. We served, and we served to the best of our ability, and we did everything that was asked of us, and nobody could ask any more.
Excellent. That was a great combination of your two answers together. And, it's not the end of the story, right? To take that longer perspective. But that focusing on what we control is really, really helpful. So Fiona, you come in with this long history of supporting severely injured military personnel and veterans at Headley Court. And we have a lot of family members and caregivers who tune into this show. So what would you like to share about supporting someone who's going through a life-altering experience?
Thanks, Mollie. Well, I think first of all, I would say take the time to listen, to acknowledge what that person's feeling and to validate it. I personally often have a tendency to act and want to offer practical support, but often giving people space to talk about their experiences and chat about what they're feeling with somebody they trust is the first stage, and understanding what they need. It may well be that they just want to talk about their experiences. Remember the positive influences, as David mentioned, there were many that we had. And then encouraging that individual to practice self-care, put their well-being first, because again, quite often consuming a lot of media around this can be quite unsettling for many people and can be quite a destructive behavior pattern. And then, if that person is still struggling, reach out for that professional support and gather the support that's available to veterans at the moment, of which there are many sources, particularly in the UK, and I'm sure it's the same in the US. And really look out for those around you who are struggling too. Reach out to your former colleagues. It's quite different when you come back off an operational tour and you're in camp. You've got all your friends around you. You can go to the bar. You can go and kick a football around. But when you're a veteran and you're sat at home on your own without that support network, without those people who are there with you, just pick up the phone, send a message, whatever means you can to reach out to those people who are with you with that shared experience, and have a chat, because there's undoubtedly that there'll be someone out there feeling the same way as you are.
Thank you, Fiona. Really great advice. So Vince, we want to help people before they get into crisis level. You know that at Worldmaker, we define resilience as the capacity to prepare for, adapt to, and grow through adversity. What can people do to put some safeguards in place beforehand?
Thanks, Molly, and thanks to the team for having me today. I think to that point, folks to put those safeguards in place, that tells me, if they're not already in the crisis mode, that they're practicing resilience. They're mentally, physically, socially, and spiritually fit. They're adaptable. They're communicating well. They're getting good sleep. They're eating well, and they're connected to their peers, to their friends, and their family. And spiritually, they are, have those strong core values and can, help others, who may need that help. So I think with that, if you're prepared before the crisis hits you, then you're going to be prepared when the crisis does come about, and you'll be able to rely on your training, your skills. You'll know where to go to get help through resources. Talking to a friend or a commander or a leader, spiritual advisor, whoever you need is your go-to, who can help you overcome whatever the crisis may be. Because, we all know that if you have high resilience, your stress level is going to be low. And so if you're maintaining that high resilience level, again, you have low stress, and you want to keep that high resilience. And if the stress gets high, know how to go back and rely on your skills, your resilient skills that you're familiar with.
Excellent job talking about how we can keep those perceived resources higher than the demands, even as those demands are increasing.
Correct.
Good stuff. All right, I want to wrap up this segment. I knew it would go quickly by having everyone answer just a quick answer to this question. Despite today's challenges, and we know they're high and seemingly growing every day, what gives you hope for the future? Jeff, what gives you hope for the future?
I think, the nature of man. I think I have tremendous confidence and hope in people, and it's easy to look around and become dispirited, politically. I'm not sure it's this way in the UK, although I imagine it is. Politically in the United States here, we're at each other's throats, and we don't listen. But I read an article recently written by somebody about how it felt pretty hopeless, and it felt like there was no good way ahead. And the timing was at about the end of the Vietnam War. And there was all kinds of things that were tearing our country apart. But even then, there was a couple of vignettes about the goodness of man. So that's actually what gives me hope. And I think we'll make it through this.
Excellent. David, what gives you hope for the future?
I think the young people coming through life behind us, those who are senior school students, university students, and early part of work, I look at them and I can take very little but hope, actually. I think there's such enormous potential in those, I'll call them kids, some of them are well and truly adults, but those people coming through now have enormous potential, and I see that in all walks of life. I saw it in the military when I was serving. I still see it in the military when I have connections with them now. I see them in all different professions. And I think their social conscience is greater than ours. A very broad statement, but it's better than ours ever was. They're much more responsible about the environment and the people around them. Sometimes, we could argue, we oldies, that they take that a bit far, but actually, I'd rather that than the other. So I think the young people of today gives me enormous hope for the future.
Fiona, what gives you hope for the future?
Quite similar to David, but I guess I'm going a generation even lower. I have 2 young children who are under the age of 5, and that gives me hope that I have the potential to influence 2 young people who will then be able to assert their influence on this world. And it gives me hope then that I have the ability to influence those lives, and they therefore can go on and hopefully become world makers and do great things.
Excellent. And how about you, Vince? What gives you hope?
That's a great question. I think what gives me hope is knowing that and seeing that we're recognizing that our world is changing, and we need to get after the environment, the climate change, and being aware that, you know, what we need to do to continue to make this a peaceful place gives me hope that there's a lot more awareness out there of where we need to go, and if we don't stop and take the time to do those things, then, you know, that's need to be done, you know, that's going to eliminate us growing. So I think that gives me hope that we have a higher awareness and alertness of changing the world.
Beautifully said. More helpful perspectives coming up. Stay tuned.
Today, more than ever, you need fast, reliable internet. At Mediacom, we want you to know you can count on us. Our fiber-powered 100% gigabit technology network was built for the future. We have enormous capacity and power and 99.99% network reliability. So even though these are uncertain times, we're prepared, and you can be certain we'll keep your world connected.
Welcome back to Resiliency Matters. We have the benefit of talking a bit while you're watching PSAs. And Jeff, I want to go back to you because something David said really resonated with you and you wanted to expand upon that a bit.
Sure. Yeah, David, one of the things David talked about was trying to focus on the things you can control rather than the things that you can't. And that's central to the ancient Greek philosophy called Stoicism. And I think it's really, really important. It's really important that people think about that and have an outlook to help them become individually more resilient, but also may help them a little bit with context. I know we're specifically talking about Afghanistan, but it applies to so much else. I do want to provide a suggestion that probably the best article I ever read or anything I ever read about Stoicism, the name of it is The World of Epictetus. And Epictetus was the father of Stoicism. It's an article written by James Bond Stockdale, former admiral in the United States Navy. He was one of our longest held prisoners of war in Vietnam, tortured through much of his time while he was in prison. And he talked about what got him through. And it was really this philosophy about Stoicism. So I think it's an important thing for people to think about.
Excellent. And we will put a link up, or you also can find reference to that at our worldmakerinternational.org site. We'll make sure to have it there when we brief this show. So, David, you've had years of directing a charity that serves severely ill and wounded military and vets. What do you think are some of the key pieces of a healthy recovery? Whether that's to the demands if somebody is struggling with that transition from Afghanistan through COVID. We're all recovering from various things beyond the illness and injury. What are some of those key pieces to keep in mind?
I've always, that's a really great question, actually. And I've always felt that the absolute key in your recovery, whether it's, as you say, from illness or injury, or whether it's from some sort of emotional shock that people might have felt from Afghanistan or other things, is you need to invest in it yourself. You mustn't just look to other people to fix your problems for you, because it's all about, this is one of those rare occasions where it really is all about you, and you need to own that and take responsibility for it, because you can do most about it. And I think very often the one of the keys at the heart of it is that when people go through an event that leads to them having to go through a form of recovery at the end, they can lose some of their purpose and their meaning, and therefore there's a strong aspect of, if you have to sort of redefining or at least retaining your identity as a person, working out who you are, and actually just transition out of the military or transition out of some of the other uniformed services can be that sort of moment where you have to sort of work out who you are again. because you don't wear the uniform, you don't wear the rank, you're now Mr. or Mrs. or Miss. And therefore that understanding who you are and what your role in life and what your purpose is really important, is really, really key. And then there's a couple which I think are easy to say, less easy to do if you don't commit. And one of them is to look after yourself, your own well-being. And that isn't just about being active, fit, and healthy, but it's also about. And when I say active, you don't need to be running marathons. It might be just going for a walk and keeping out in the fresh air, but doing something. But it's also about looking after your sleep. And of course, everything is so much harder when you're tired. And we all find that, even when we're not under pressure. When you're tired, things are harder. Life's tough. You're eating well, drinking well, that kind of stuff is so important. And then I'm going to touch on something Fiona, I think, mentioned earlier, which is when you are struggling, reach out and speak to people. Speak to others who are in your network already or who you think can help you. And share the burden you're carrying and see how they can help. Or maybe they're just going to listen, and in the course of talking to them, you're going to work it out for yourself. When I say that, it's not just bad for the bad stories. If you've got good things to tell people, go and tell them that too, because they'll love to hear them. And that can give you a lift that you need. So in a sort of, in a summary, that would be the sort of things that I would look to. And I also feel, just to wrap it off at the end, is, don't let all the things you haven't done yet allow you to forget all the things you have achieved already. And that is really important, because so often in life we only see the things we haven't done yet, and we forget the path we've been on to get to here.
Thank you. What a great way to bring together that it's all about you, right? It starts with you, your commitment, and support is needed. With that whole we thrive together, and to be holding, both of those, but knowing where it starts, and that's with our own commitment. Very well said. So Fiona, in a desire to connect or to stay informed, a lot of people are either glued to news channels or in social media and using it in a way that is eroding resilience and well-being. How do you find a balance between wanting to be informed and wanting to be sane, to be calm, to be healthy?
Thanks, Molly. Well, I can certainly say that when the recent events in Afghanistan started unfolding, I was glued to the news channels, and I had to set my own boundaries. Jeff and David have both talked about what can you control, and I realized that I could set some boundaries to regain control of that situation. I decided, what do I want to be informed about and how do I want to be informed? Acknowledging what's not helpful for you, and also deciding when you're going to consume that information. Going down a Twitter rabbit hole at 10 o'clock at night, just before you're trying to go to bed, might not be the most useful thing to help you sleep, because as David also alluded to, sleep is so important for your general well-being. If you do want to carry on using Twitter and other channels like that, who do you need to unfollow? Because as Jeff said, there's a lot of political infighting at the moment, and people taking what I like to think is cheap shots at others, which isn't necessarily helpful when it's around this rhetoric around Afghanistan. And so, set your own boundaries, understand what you want to consume and how you want to consume it, and stick to that.
Wonderful. So Vince, we've been doing a lot of work. You, as I mentioned, at JBA and JBAB are valued educational partners. And so we have a glimpse, through surveys or discussions with you, of all that is going on, so much going on within your installation, within the military community. What are you finding helpful to either personally manage your demands as you do this work, or to be supporting others? What would you like to talk about at this time?
So that's a great question, and I think what I find helpful is I try to communicate to our team, about our comprehensive airman fitness model, being mentally, physically, spiritually, and socially fit across all those 4 domains, which fits right into your Thrive 4, having that sense of safety, belonging, competence, and purpose. If you have all those skills and you maintain that balance across all 4, you're going to be able to adapt. You're going to be able to communicate. You're going to be able to connect with people. You're going to understand your purpose, why you're doing what you do. You're going to be able to persevere. And so I think, just having a total understanding of where you are across the domains, across the Thrive 4 pillars, is just a huge benefit. So.
Excellent. And I think there's so much good work going on around you, kind of working against the stigma that we have dealt with for a long time, and that's part of, I think, what gives me hope. We talked about what gives us hope. Really seeing some changes around people embracing that they're just not a stick figure walking around, with that body, and they're really connecting the mental and physical, emotional and spiritual, and that's serving us well. Jeff, will you help us wrap up? Because, we, like I said, have a lot of families and caregivers on the call. And not only, have you, sir, but your son recently wrapped up his 8th tour in Afghanistan as an Army Ranger. What helped your family get through those periods of separation and uncertainty?
Thanks for the question, Molly. Let me just start by saying that to me, when I was going to combat pretty regularly over the last 20 years and spending a lot of time away, I was focused on the mission. I was focused on taking care of my troops, and I was concerned for my family, but it was different when my son went for the first time. And that gave me a completely different perspective. I missed all 3 of my kids' senior years in high school. In those cases, I was deployed to Iraq every time. And it was tough, but it wasn't a big deal. But when my son started deploying to combat, it became a big deal. And I learned much more about what our families go through. And so one thing that helped me was just because he was part of such a great unit that had a lot of unique expertise, I had a lot of confidence in what he was doing and the people that were around him. So I knew that despite what he was doing was fairly dangerous, he was in as good a hands as he could be in. But again, what I think the more important thing is, rather than looking at me and how I dealt with it, is the perspective it gave me to help us all understand we need to think about our military families, the families of first responders, and everybody else who is also serving. They may not be the ones deployed, but they're all going through these things, and they're all going to play a key role in helping that person when they come home.
A great way to remind us, as we say at Worldmaker, we thrive together. Thank you for joining us, viewers, today on Resiliency Matters on MediaCom MC22, your local programming leader.